First, please join us in welcoming business strategist, data analytics expert, and author of this fourth paper, Ahmad Eshghyar, to present his and IPP's findings and research.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Everybody. Okay. I have to grow a little bit shorter. Thank you very much. So the first thing we do is just overview what happened in the past two systems. It's just we start with what happened prior to 1979. The privatization under Pahlavi regime was a continuum of economic growth in 50s, 60s, and 70s. So the majority of the big part of the privatization was through white revolution. About 50% of the agricultural land was given to the farmers. This impacted about half of the people in rural area, about a third of the total households in the country. But apart from that, there were also large companies that got privatized partially or fully. Iran Air, for example, Iranian Tobacco Company, and also Iranian National Steel. The idea was to bring fresh blood for management, bring in foreign direct investment, and also connect these companies to global market to have better chance of growth. But in contrast, what happened since 1979? The first thing they did, they confiscated assets of these private companies, put it in the helm of the government, and later many bunyads that they created. Initially, for example, Bunyad Mustazafan in 1980, and later ICO in 1989, that they grew to substantial sizes by confiscating assets. So what they have done later, in 90s, they started thinking that none of these organizations work, and they started thinking of privatization. In the year 2000, they ratified the privatization through Iranian Privatization Organization, and in the 20 years since that, they privatized $88 billion of assets. And I say $88 billion of assets, this is the sale value. This is not intrinsic value, this is not asset value. Many of these companies were sold way below intrinsic value, and in many cases below the asset value, sold to cronies. And what I mean by cronies, only 10% of this value was transferred really to the public, to private sector. The rest is just washed for fast profit, and I go through that. If we look at the breakdown of the companies that they got privatized, almost all of them are asset heavy. And this is a very good indication that why privatization under the current regime did not work. Why? Why they were so interested in liquidating these assets and selling them to public? Many of them were sold below the asset value. So a person with connection with rent would get this organization below the asset value, just breaks down the asset and sell them partially. So there is no value creation. The whole intention of privatization was not met, the whole objective. And then we go to the second problem, apart from the systematic corruption, is lack of political will for proper privatization and lack of political will for growth. If there was an intention for growth, these assets would have been privatized differently, not just for a fast profit. These are the most important issues that privatization under the current regime has not worked, is not working, and is not going to work. So what is the current state of state-owned enterprises in Iran? We know more than 3,000 state-owned enterprises, and there are probably thousands more that are under shell companies or hidden for sanction busting or many other purposes. The total value of these assets we estimate to be about $400 billion. This is the top line estimate, not the bottom up, based on the size of Iranian economy estimate. And the major economic holdings that hold these state-owned enterprises are IRGC, Bunyad Mustazafan, ICO, Astan Quds, and Comité Imdad. And I want to say these organizations are the top big fishes in the ocean. There are other bunyads or other organizations that are smaller, or their assets that they have are publicly traded, which is way easier to deal with, contrary to these contrary to these holdings. And with that, I go to experience of Soviet Union before I say what we need to do in Iran, what worked and what didn't work. So there were lack of legal framework and free market experience that resulted in many issues in these countries. Every single one of them had that, some lower, some more. So they had short-term decline in GDP, short-term decline in productivity, and short-term harm to job market. Some countries, they had some elements of free market, so they were harmed less, but others, they got harmed, and this impacted the political landscape and created a potential for the previous elite to come back and get power. It created a resentment among the population. For example, in Russia, in 10 years since fall of Soviet Union, the prices rose 26 times, and the GDP dropped by 40%. So it's just total collapse of economy in 10 years. And as we are speaking about Russia, how they did the privatization, in big part, they did through a very faulty voucher program. So they distributed voucher among people, but the employees and managers, they got the lion's shares of stocks in the company that they were working for. So the managers had the incentive to do share dilution. They were issuing a stock, and they were devaluing the stock that was given to non-manager and non-employees. They took ownership of stocks of employees kind of by force. So if you want to keep employed, you have to give me your shares. And then it created the same corrupt elite that were running these companies. It got rich and rich out of the new system. So they benefited in the past system, they benefited in the new system as well. And about people, they got these shares. There was no market system for valuation of these assets. There was no price discovery. So the thing that happened is that there were fire sales of these assets. People were selling their government-issued vouchers for a kilo of butter. This is literally a kilo of butter. And they didn't know what's the value. And who had the money? The old KGB chaps. They had the money. They accumulated the wealth. It's just, so Soviet Union fall, it didn't get better. It get a little bit worse for many people. And if that was not enough, they had other programs like loan for ownership that the banks or financial institution can give loan to a manufacturing facility and get the ownership of it just based on loan, which was very faulty. Again, resulted in massive wealth accumulation. But, I mean, I said everything that didn't work. Even in a faulty privatization like in East Europe, the asset productivity on average grew by 20%. So even a very faulty privatization has its own benefits. And also cost efficiency increased by 8%. So many things that they have done that worked very well, working on removing import restrictions, creating competition, working on income tax and VAT overhaul to create government income, and regulatory overhaul. And some of the countries, they had also post-privatization control that really helped the government to ensure public interest after privatization. So with that, we go back to Iran. There are certain questions that we need to answer. The first one is that what is the government control method? So it's this day one, in which way the government is going to own these assets. For the majority of cases, we recommend receivership. So the government has control, but it does not, the balance sheet of these companies is not going to be under the balance sheet of the government, because many of these organizations, as Dr. Javadi and Dr. Jahanparvar discussed, they are deeply in debt. they are not having any positive value, and putting them under government is gonna has to carry that debt. Some of them, especially if they are in financial institutions, the debt and the obligation might be uncapped, and this is a big risk. With the exception is strategic assets, notably oil and gas industry and national security assets. They are going to be under government ownership, and they're going to be privatized in short or long term afterwards. Another form of government control, government exerting control, is restitution. Many people's assets were forcibly confiscated in the past 45 years. The respect of law and private ownership requires that these people have the right to their property, and we have to respect that. So there is going to be restitution. There is a problem with that many of these assets have changed hand in hands, or they have been broken down. It is not possible to return the exact asset to the right owner. With that, we have to define a specially assigned court, and these people go through a court settlement, so they are not dealing with the organization that confiscated their asset, but with the court order, the government has the mandate to return the real value of their assets, to compensate them. And with that, we go to objective. The objective of the privatization is 3 parts. The first one, which is the obvious one, is economic value. Every privatization effort wants to maximize economic value. But there are 2 other objectives, especially in case of Iran and in case of countries in transition. One is that minimizing disruption. Dr. Jawadi and John Parvar discussed this. In short term, we are going to have a lot of problems. You do not want to disrupt job market. You do not want to disrupt financial market. You want to have as little short-term impact as possible. Every single Eastern European countries had a drop in GDP, had a big hike in jobless market. We want to minimize that, and we have the resources to do that. And the third part is demoralizing Islamic regime loyalists. And by that there are some assets that, while they have no economic value, they have meaning for the Islamic regime loyalists. And privatizing those assets and selling them to the new owners send a message that that regime is over. So with that, we go to privatization method. In short term, again, following the discussion that the price discovery and a fire sale is a big problem in short term. So we don't want to sell the asset in a public market in short term. The majority is going to be through voucher distribution to people, and they're going to be hold between 1 to 3 years for selling them until the market finds its balance and these assets actually become valuable. And this maximizes public participation, and people are going to see that the new system is there for them and not just to maximize corruption as the previous regime. There will be a minority equity offering because we want eventually a price discovery in the market. You want the free market to work, you want free discovery of the value, and you want private owners of these shares to run the company, to maximize their own long-term benefit. And in long term, it's going to be reversed. A majority of shares is going to be offered as a public offering because we have a price discovery. There is no fire sale, and people can buy it in public market. The market is settled. And with that, I go to post-privatization framework. The whole idea is that we talked about what we know, what we know, we don't know, but there is always be something that we don't know that we don't know. There are things that are going to happen that we cannot control ahead of time. So we can do planning forever, or we can be ready to adjust our plan. Post-privatization control is that we have to oversee how the privatized companies functioned. if we can correct course for the future privatization, and also similar to many other countries, for example, Germany had and it still has, government has a sharing vote in many large companies. If they want to have major M&A or any larger asset sales, the government has a say in it because there is a public interest about it. And with that, we are going to ensure the smooth transition toward a free market that everybody can enjoy and profit and prosper. Thank you.